1 win in 11 in all competitions for Manchester City, Rory. 8 of those defeats as well. I mean, it's just, I still can't quite get my head round it. But once again, this is a really tricky game for them.
No, it's one of the most shocking things that's happened in sport that I can remember. Like, this is totally unpredictable. Nobody could have envisaged that it would go this way. They are totally beatable. They are nothing like the team that we expect them to be. Pep Guardiola is out of ideas. That's the weirdest thing. He doesn't have a solution to this. He looks baffled. I mean, he's pulling his almost non-existent hair out, isn't he? Like, he really is, like, literally doing that. And I can't see them getting a win.
No, they lost this game last season.
I can't see them getting a win. And when you talk about it and you refer to it as a crisis, I don't know if you noticed, but some Man City fans, when I speak about them, I've said it's a crisis and they don't like it. It's not quite a crisis. You can't have a crisis when you've got the best manager in the world. And they get clever with the terminology. They refer to it maybe as a blip or a slump.
No, it's a crisis. Do you know why it's a crisis as well? It's not like they're drawing all these games. They're losing, so they're in relegation.
They're getting battered. They're getting battered. The other thing is, and I asked
by the way,
question
sorry, just to clarify, relegation form. They're not going to be relegated.
No,
I'm just getting that across.
No, they are. They're averaging half a point a game, aren't they? You know, like their form over the last 11 games, they're half a point a game.
Yeah, 5 losses in 7. And the last time they lost 5 was in the last 67. That shows the drop-off. It's absolutely unbelievable.
Do you think, and I think it's important before I even ask this question to acknowledge that I think Pep Guardiola is a genius. I think he's undoubtedly the second best manager that the Premier League has ever had. I think that he is the best manager around at the moment. I think he's the best manager for the job at Manchester City. But is there ever a conversation around his future? For example, just to prove this, you know, people go, nobody could sack him. Nobody could sack Pep Guardiola. He's too big, too good, too proven. Roman Abramovich would have sacked him.
Definitely.
Roman Abramovich would have sacked him, undoubtedly.
Definitely. Even though
8 defeats in 11 games?
All of that
credit, hang on. 8 defeats in 11 games. Just to
point
this out.
But I know Abramovich had some incredible managers, but he didn't have one that won 4 Premier Leagues in a row. He didn't have one.
No, because they were sacked the second that it went wrong.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Honestly, 8 defeats in 11 games. Just to give you an example, when Scolari was our manager, he lost 2 out of 11 and was sacked. Like, Scolari was a terrible manager and sacking him was the right thing for us to do. But he was brought in. It went so wrong so quickly. He lost 2 out of 11 and he was sacked.
You know what's funny?
8 out of 11. Of course he would have sacked him.
I even heard an Arsenal fan say earlier, and I thought this was quite funny. We were talking about, it's been 5 years of Mikel Arteta at the club, and we were talking about Emery when he got sacked. And this Arsenal fan went, yeah, I mean, Emery had won 1 in 11. It's absolutely criminal.
Yeah.
And I went, hold on. That's exactly
level.
what Man City have done at the moment.
Look, for the record, I don't think they should sack him.
No.
But the only reason that he isn't sacked and the only reason that we aren't talking about him losing his job is legacy. And I don't think that Roman Abramovich ever put any sort of prestige or privilege on legacy. It was always about how good are you today? What have you done today? Disgracefully, in my opinion, but Carlo Ancelotti was sacked in the dugout at Goodison Park. Like, there was no room for sentiment. But do you think there is ever a world where Manchester City, like, this can't, it's like unsustainable, isn't it? He can't just lose again and again.
He's got to find some sort of solution. They've got to try in some way to get back to winning ways. But I still think that sacking him would be too much, almost wherever they finish this season. I really do.
Yeah, because you wouldn't put it past Guardiola to finish 15th this season and win the league next year with 100 points. Yeah, exactly. So I agree that they shouldn't sack
championship,
him. I agree that they shouldn't sack him, but I do also believe that he looks so devoid of ideas.
And he's admitting it as well. He's saying, I'm not good enough. I need to sort this out. Like you say, it's absolutely baffling. And, very, very tricky game. Aston Villa have only lost once at home so far this season. That was to Arsenal very early on as well. So they've got a good record at Villa Park, and they beat Man City in this game last season as well. So the struggles could continue this weekend for City. What about Tottenham against Liverpool? Dress rehearsal for the League Cup semi-final as well. Tottenham expending a lot of energy with the funniest game of football I've ever seen last night as well. Liverpool going there on a Sunday at 4:30. For me, I can only see a Liverpool win.
I can only see a Liverpool win. I can only see a world where Liverpool come out of this game with 3 points and come out of it fairly easily and totally unscathed.
The one thing that you could say, though, with Liverpool, and we've actually seen it, if you look at the Fulham game and you look at the Newcastle game, is that since they've lost Konate to injury, they are a bit more suspect at the back.
No,
Robertson struggled in his last game. Yeah. So there could be a world where Tottenham do take advantage of that because they are good going forward.
No, Robertson is a real problem. You know, if Liverpool are going to make any signings in January, I think a lot of Liverpool fans have previously said, we want a midfielder. We need somebody to reinforce that midfield. Gravenberch is unreal, but we have to play him every game. I don't think Szoboszlai is particularly good. Do you think that's fair?
No, I think he's a decent player.
Do you think he's good enough for them?
Yeah.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, in that squad, yeah, I think he is.
Do you?
Yeah. He's a good player.
I'm not convinced.
Really?
No, not really. But look, maybe you and I agree to disagree on that, but a lot of Liverpool fans would have said a midfielder. I think they need to sign a left back.
Yeah, I agree.
Because Robertson is now a slight problem. He looks exposed, and whether his form has gone or not, whether the fact that he's 30 or 31 is relevant or not, he could be just as good as he was when he was 26. The fact that we're asking these questions is troubling for him. And Tsimikas, I think we might be about to disagree again, but I don't really rate Tsimikas.
I would understand you wanting Liverpool to go back into the market. What's funny is I feel like Arne Slot is a bit of a fan of Tsimikas. He has played him on a fair few occasions so far this season. But I think you're right. You know, given where Liverpool are in the league and how unexpected it's all been, I do think that, you know, a bit of January business and getting in a player that's just going to elevate that defence a bit more and a bit further could be worth doing.
But despite all of this talk and we're talking about the vulnerability of Liverpool at the back, I think that Liverpool will make light work of Tottenham, and because now they have a semi-final. Look, the league form is always important, and it's your bread and butter, and it's important that you finish as high up the league as possible. But Tottenham are a very particular club. There's only maybe Everton and Newcastle who are part of this club. Any form of silverware is actually more important than any sort of conversation around league finish.
Yeah.
So this week, if Tottenham can knock Manchester United out the cup and lose to Liverpool, they're one of the rare clubs where that would be seen as a very good week.
Well, it's not a very good week, but
of course
you know,
it is. I don't think we can overstate how important it is.
Getting through in the cup's great, but you can't say it's a very good week if you lose.
It's not just getting through in the cup. They didn't beat Tranmere at home. They beat Manchester United, a slightly resurgent Manchester United, and they did it in a fairly convincing way. I know they tried to throw it away, but ultimately they launched Manchester United out of the cup and they've made it into the semi-finals. That's a good week for Tottenham. It doesn't really matter what bookends it.
Talking of Manchester United, they take on Bournemouth. That one's on Sunday at 2 o'clock.
Tricky.
They lost this game 3-0 last season.
Tricky game.
At Old Trafford.
Yeah, it's a really tricky game.
Yeah, a very good side, Bournemouth. I thought they were a bit unlucky against West Ham, although do you know what West Ham have picked up? We'll talk about West Ham after the break. I'm sure Ian Abrams will have his 2 pence as well.
Iraola is one of the best managers in the league that will leave the club he's at. You know, when you think about, so if Sean Dyche were to get the sack, if Postecoglou were to get the sack, I feel like it's Marco Silva at Fulham and Iraola at Bournemouth. Who would you go for out of those two? I rate them both very highly. I rate them both really highly, in fact. I think that Marco Silva has redefined the way I feel about Fulham.
Do you think they're better managers right now than Ange Postecoglou?
Yes, I think they're both better than Ange Postecoglou, to be frank.
So why don't Spurs go for it now?
I think they should. I think they should. I think that Iraola is definitely a better manager than Postecoglou, and I certainly think that Marco Silva is one of the hottest properties in the Premier League. Yeah. Like, if you think about whatever job becomes available, it doesn't matter whether it's West Ham, Tottenham, Everton, wherever. Both of the managers that we're discussing here are capable of taking on a club of that stature, and I think that Marco Silva especially is ready. You know, he's had the stint at Everton. He's done brilliantly at Fulham. He's got Fulham like competing for Europe.
Is another manager in that bracket, Thomas Frank, Brentford taking on Forest. We talked about Forest, but Thomas Frank, is he in that triumvirate of managers?
Brilliant. Yes, he is, but I think it's slightly different. I think that Thomas Frank is actually the best manager in the world for Brentford. Like, I don't think Brentford could improve on their manager.
So, are you saying? So you're saying that
I think his skill set is very specific.
Iraola and Silva could take on Tottenham. Thomas Frank couldn't take on Tottenham.
No, it's not that I don't think he could. I think he could. But if you look at what Thomas Frank has at Brentford, the club is almost built in his image. He is more, to coin a phrase that was used by Man City fans to show their love for Pep Guardiola, Thomas Frank is more than a manager. He is interwoven into the fabric of the club, which makes life very difficult. You can't just pluck someone out of their role at Brentford and put him in the hot seat at Old Trafford and expect him to replicate that form, because it's all about the conditioning. He is so integral to what Brentford are doing and linked into the way that Brentford run their club. Whereas I feel like Iraola is a coach. I feel like Marco Silva is a coach, and you could therefore pull them out and expect them to replicate their form and elevate the club that they went into. Yeah,
it's a very interesting point. It's almost like that, that sense of control that they have.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.